Okay, we're going to talk about slope questions. Slope questions are going to come up often on a lot of standardized tests. And slope can be misunderstood because it's sort of a strange word for what they're looking for. So right here, we have a word problem that says the table below shows the number of hours studied and the test scores, and it's in a table. And the question is, what's the slope of the line that passes through these points? Everything makes sense except for the question. The question is slope of a line. I don't see any lines. I don't see a graph. I don't see anything. And my answers are all whole numbers. Now, here's the crazy thing about slope. Sometimes the answer is going to be a whole number, and sometimes going to be a fraction. And test writers love that stuff because it adds to the confusion. But we're not going to worry about it because we're just going to solve this. Okay, here's the hack. Ready? Here we go. Slope just means a relationship between two numbers, like miles per gallon. So when you hear slope, think rate, kind of loosely, miles per gallon. Like if you put a gallon of gas in, how many miles can I go? Where numbers are connected. So that's what we have here, hours studied and a test score. So how we do it when it's a table, pick any two pairs of numbers. Now a pair of number is like that. 2 and 50 are connected. That tells the story. If you study for 2 hours, you're going to get a 50. So we got to study more than 2 hours, whatever. So that's one pair of numbers. Now I'm going to pick the second one, BAP. I'm just going to pick the first two, smallest numbers, whatever's easy. Try to avoid negative numbers. Doesn't even matter which ones you pick. Just make sure that you connect the others. And then ignore the others. Ignore everything. We're going to ignore the answer. We're going to ignore the question. We're going to ignore all that other stuff. And all we're going to do is get the answer right. Here's what you do. The story goes downhill. All right, now that's weird. But on the left-hand side, you have a 2 and a 4. That means in this story, a 2 became a 4. And while a 2 became a 4, a 50 became a 100. It doesn't matter what the word problem is right now. It doesn't matter anything about the story. But that's all we need to remember. As a 2 became a 4, and while that happened, a 50 became a 100. And it's important we do that side first because this side causes that. Remember, this is hours studied is over here, and that's the score. This happens first, and that it affects that. Later on, you'll be doing independent variable and dependent variable. Same thing. The left side is the x-axis. It'll always be on the left, blah, 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 whatever. Let's just get this question right. So a 2 became a 4. How does a 2 become 4? Well, somebody has to add 2. So we're halfway home. We're going to draw a fraction, always do a fraction. The 2 goes on the bottom. The left side always goes on the bottom of the fraction. And it's always positive. I'm going to unclick that. What happened? A 2 became a 4. So how does a 2 become a 4? Somebody has to add 2. That number goes on the top or the bottom? Goes on the bottom. Can that number be negative? No. Always be a positive number. Halfway home. Now we're going to do the right side. On the right side, a 50 became a 100. How does a 50 become a 100? Well, somebody has to add 50. That number goes on top. So the right side always is on top of the fraction. And that number could be positive or negative. And what that means is like if this was 100 up here and this was a 50, well, then what happened? Somebody took away 50. But that's not what happened here. So we got to be careful on this side. If you notice that the numbers, as the story goes, if the numbers go higher, you will always have a positive slope. If the numbers get lower on the left side, or I'm sorry, on the right side, you will have a negative slope. That's for a different moment. But anyway, 50 over 2 is what we have now. So is this one of the answer choices? No. 50 over 2 is not. Remember, they were all whole numbers. They were like 10 or 12 or like quarterback numbers. You know what I mean? So, but they weren't 50 over 2. Now, this isn't the hardest thing in the world, but we have to adjust a fraction. That's no big deal. And there's 3 ways you can do it. One is you could reduce it. And those are both even numbers. You can cut them in half and do all this stuff. Second is you can always divide down. Remember, all fractions are division problems. This is a division symbol. It's a picture of a fraction. It's a line with something on top and something on the bottom. So that's why I always draw that line a little bit too long. I could put two dots, make my division sign, and I could type in 50 divided by 2. Another thing I could do is use this awesome calculator. So that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to use the awesome calculator. I'm going to hit clear a whole bunch of times. I could type in 50 divided by 2, and I'd get the answer right. The answer is 25. Another way I could do it is by using that ND button, that sweet numerator denominator thing. And all these buttons, so many of these buttons we don't need to use. But I'm going to type 50 up top. I'm going to use this video game button over here to go downstairs. Type in my 2. And it makes this nice little arrow to say, hey, you're still downstairs. Do you mean to be downstairs? If you don't want to be downstairs, hit the right button and get out of there. Now, I didn't have to do that. But 50 over 2, this will reduce the fraction for you. So the answer is 25. By the way, if it ever reduces it to another fraction, this turn signal looking button will give an alternate answer, but the answer is 25. Every question that involves slope and tables, do this, and you'll get it right. Not so bad.
This skill is now in your toolbox. Use it wisely.